Are Skavenslaves any good? Okay, you know the answer is a loud no, no, nai, ie, niet, hadutu, rien, etc., etc. We get it. Now, do they have a use? That is a different tale altogether. Yes, yes. Let me tell you a story. But first, please like, subscribe, comment, and consider donating your warpstone to my Ko-Fi page. Your support is extremely valued one way or another. Let's start with the basic Skaven slave unit. Recruit cost is 150 gold, upkeep is 38 default, with 180 models on Ultra and 9,000 health spread between them for an even 50 health per entity. Armor is 0! Leadership is 35, speed is 42 by default, but more on that later. Melee attack is 12, which is most assuredly miserable, with an attack interval of 4.3, which is dull and average sounding. Melee defense is 10, but more on that later. Weapon strength is 18, split between 14 base damage and 4 armor piercing. Charge bonus is 5, and mass is 90, so less than an average human or elf. Besides being, but of course, expendable, the Skavenslaves have the standard strength in numbers trait, shaving 10% from speed, but granting the benefit of plus 6 leadership and plus 8 melee defense, granting this basic unit 41 leadership, still really awful, and 18 melee defense, which is quite a lot more than the 10 it appeared to be. That's an 80% boost. Now how about the Skavenslave spears? Well, they cost 175 gold to recruit and 44 upkeep, with unchanged model number, hit points, and the lack of armor, low leadership, and the same middling speed. Melee attack is 9, so it's actually worse, and so is the attack interval, down to 4.6. Melee defense is up to 16. Weapon strength is actually worse at 16, split between 12 base damage and 4 armor piercing. There is a bonus versus large of 6, so against, let's say, Centaurs, you're stabbing at melee attack 15 and weapon strength 22, most of that being base damage. Charge bonus is 3, mass is still 90, and there is no special mechanic added. Therefore, there is no charge defense versus large or charge reflection. Nope, they'll get run over, simple as that. And yet, if we add strength in numbers, leadership is 41 again, sure, but melee defense is 24 now. 24? That's oddly adequate sounding? Before getting too deep into the rest, let's take a quick look at Skavenslaves Slingers. Here we have 140 models on Ultra and 6,720 health spread between them, which means a lot less as a total unit. Recruit cost is actually 225 in campaign, higher than in multiplayer, with 56 upkeep. Leadership is 33, and I won't even waste my breath on melee stats. Now, as far as range goes, they have 22 ammunition, which is a fair bit, a range of 120 meters, and official missile damage of 9, with base damage of 7 and armor piercing of 1 per hit. 1 bullet per attack. That's the actual term, by the way. Reload time is 9. Total accuracy is the bog standard 20, calibration distance is 85, meaning they're extra inaccurate at the far end of their relatively short range, and calibration area is 4.8, meaning that even within that distance, they're horrendously inaccurate, but sling enough and something may get bonked in the head. So let's set the slingers aside and look at a comparison with other low-tier infantry. Amusingly, Empire swordsmen look like the elite units in this bunch. Compared to Skavenslaves, skeleton warriors bring a lot of numbers and hit a lot more often than Skavenslaves, and considerably harder. Having said that, speed is still inferior, melee defense is barely higher, and leadership is actually lower. With the caveat that skeletons don't break, they crumble. Let's compare goblins with Skavenslaves then. Yes, the goblins have markedly better leadership and have token armor and also shields, and are almost as fast. They also have much better melee attack, a distinction without much of a difference if fighting a larger than goblin-sized or man-sized target. Melee defense is 26, and the weapon strength is higher again unless fighting Centaurs or Dark Riders. Yet, the Skavenslave spears, for all their inferior killing power, have effectively melee defense of 24 and have 20 more models. No, not in a million years will Skavenslave spears actually win quote-unquote against a goblin unit. But will they pin it in place? And for how long? That's the thing. Instead of worrying about if Skavenslaves will kill things in melee, ask yourself, rationally, if they need to. Also, ask yourself if the goblins above, costing literally twice that of the Skavenslaves unit, and almost twice the cost of the Skavenslave Spears unit, offers double the power and double the performance. I think you'll agree with me that they do not. Instantly, the naysayers say, but battle! You can only bring 20 units to a battle, so they're worthless in multiplayer. Well, I play campaign. Yes, you often have to respect the 20 unit limit. Let's say for underway interceptions, lightning strikes, it's important, but it essentially comes down to this. The Skavenslaves are the reigning kings of secondary army value. Need warm tails to raid a territory? Need public order maintained reinforcing a garrison? Need a wall manned by a worthless unit so that the towers fire? Skavenslaves are your friends. Well, your expendable minions. More to the point, there is actually a reason to get Skavenslave Spears over the other variant as the better speed bump to position you for victory. Otherwise, just see if you can sneak Skavenslaves into archers or attack from the back or something like that, and use them as sticky anvils to bog down your foes, preparing them for the rat ogres to smash in from behind. Or stuff like that. The details kind of blur. The Slinger variety is simpler. Here, they're never going to do a lot for you, but they exist. They fire, they will do damage, and damage adds up. If you're fighting on a narrow front, you at least don't have to worry too much about damage to your own front line. Just have slingers fire over their heads and keep on fighting. And thin-skinned targets will be worn down over time. So, how do we buff the Skavenslaves and make them better? Well, in the Lord Redline skills, there's nothing. Nothing! Absolutely zero buff Skavenslaves in the standard Lord skills. That's how lowly they are. Of course, they benefit from leadership buffs. Actually, they benefit from that a lot. But you can only do so much when the enemy is rocking fear and terror. Also, I said standard Lord skills. Something not standard is used by the Warlords, known as Life is Cheap. 2 pips of this, which locks out other options, gives you plus 8% casualty replenishment across the board, minus 50% Skavenslave upkeep, and adds 10 armor to Skavenslaves, which sounds pretty bad until you consider that they start with nothing but old rags. What else affects them all comes from the tech tree, and this bears mention. Numbers Beyond counting adds a flat 5 charge bonus for Skavenslaves, adds 5 melee defense for Skavenslave class units, and reduces upkeep for all Skavenslave units by 20%. Harsh production quotas reduce recruitment costs of Skavenslaves by 5% among a couple of other benefits. Hit and Run adds 10% speed to all infantry units, and that includes Skavenslaves. So if you combine the above, a Warlord can have Skavenslaves recruited for a little less than the already low target, with a per turn upkeep before supply line penalties of 15 gold per turn. 15 gold per turn! Well, what if I want 10 Skavenslave Slingers? Let's see, before supply lines, 22 each, 220 gold for 10 units? Well, yeah, it sounds great until you remember that they're Skavenslave Slingers. Completely aside from the basic point that they need help from other parts of the roster for killing power, especially weapon teams. They're compatible with Warp Bomb tactics, they can bog the enemy down for crucial seconds before a powerful spell, or artillery or mortar attack devastates the area, and generally, they're a nuisance to your enemy. The superpower of the Skavenslaves, as a class, is that they take up space. Sure, you can roll over a whole bunch with chariots in an initial charge, and then what? You're surrounded by what, 500 models? That buys time for Big Daddy Chieftain to come over and smack the chariots. As for the Skavenslaves, nothing of value is lost. Of course, eventually you'll run out of leadership, warm bodies, and time. Your battle plan has to include winning while factoring in the time that the Skavenslaves are buying for you with their insignificant lives. The problem isn't that they're dying, it's their job. The problem is that you need to win while there's still any left. But that is a story for another video. Take care, and have fun letting your lessers take the hits for you. Or at least, for your weapon teams.